Dr. Jazz.
I listened to
Dr.
this trio with
Jazz.
Dado Moroni and Eddie Gomez and the Kind of Bill trio, which is, it's so beautiful. Also the tunes, like this, I listened to this ballad today, Forever by Eddie Gomez,
Oh, okay.
which is like, how all of you play. It's beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, start with this, like, how did you guys hook up together? I mean, I know you and Eddie probably played together. I don't know if with Bill probably not, right? You
No.
played it with Mark only.
Eddie and I started playing together sometime around 2013 or 14.
Oh, well, only.
Yeah, he invited me to go to Europe, Italy primarily, but we went on a trio tour with a wonderful piano player named Mark Sherman. Then we went back a second time with another great piano player from Italy named Salvatore Bonafede.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so we had these two tours, and then Dado had the idea of doing this trio, and he presented it, and we both agreed, and that's how it worked. I think we did it at least once, maybe twice. I'm trying to remember now.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, it's so nice to hear you. I listened to the album like so many times, and just you playing with the brushes like Ulio, it's just like you keep the intensity all the time. And this is something I wanted to ask you actually, like probably go back to your beginnings, but it's whether you play with brushes in a small acoustic trio or with a big band, you seem to be able to hold the intensity all the time, and like even if it's like a low thing or sound wise. And I just kind of wanted to start first, like, who were like your main influences regarding drums? I don't know, like, talking about, let's say, the 60s and the drummers you saw live. Are there some drummers that like pop in your mind immediately that kind of blew your mind?
Well, we can go back earlier than that, even with the drummers that I have seen, because in 1957, I was, how old was I? 12, 13? I can't remember now. No, and whatever. So Gene Krupa came through town. We had actually in my small hometown, we had a club that was run by a family, and the son was a big jazz fan, and he brought jazz through periodically. Wow. And he brought Gene Krupa twice for a week each time. And my father took me to see Gene just for a few moments in the afternoon at a matinee, because we couldn't legally be in the bar. That's sure. The way it worked back then. But I remember seeing this man playing, and what impressed me at the time was the intensity. I mean, there was so much energy coming off that stage. And then I started to hear some of the local drummers in Rochester, New York, who were playing really well. In 1962, my brothers and I went to New York as a family with my parents, and we went to Birdland, the original Birdland, and we heard a few different bands. 3 nights we heard Dizzy Gillespie on 2 of those nights.
Wow.
But on the Monday night, they had these off bands, the Monday Night Jam, whatever bands. And the first band had Roy Brooks on drums.
Wow.
And it was basically Horace Silver's
Yeah.
quintet without Horace. Chick Corea, who was probably 19 at the time, was playing the piano. Yeah. So Blue Mitchell and Junior Cook. And the other band had a drummer that most people don't know, but he was on the scene for a while, Clifford Jarvis, who by everyone's account, he was a prodigy and really like a comer, someone that was gonna make his mark. I think possibly Tony Williams eclipsed his moment, because Tony was just so incredible, and these things can happen. So I really don't know what happened to him, but I heard those drummers, and then like I said, I heard some of the drummers who were starting to play in Rochester, like Steve Gadd was starting to play in Rochester with bands.
Wow.
and another well-known drummer from the East Coast, Vinny Ruggiero, who was an incredible drummer as well. So hearing these musicians live, Samuel, is the most important thing, because
Yeah,
when you feel this music live, you basically get the idea, you get the picture.
yeah,
As far as what you're talking about with the intensity at a low volume and that, and even with the brushes, it has to do with your intent, right? You
yeah,
really,
sure.
by hearing this music and experiencing it live, you understand better or more fully what you need to do. And then when you try to apply that, you just have to keep that in mind as you're playing, even if it's a
Yeah,
ballad,
yeah,
slow tempo. You have to keep an interest in the
yeah,
pulse.
yeah, yeah. No, but it's like, I mean, we have like this poll of, okay, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, Tony, Alvin, of course, who are, I don't know who told me, like, I did one interview, maybe it was Jerry Bergonzi, that, or was it, I don't remember now, but like that he was sitting next to Alvin's and Tony's hi-hat cymbal, and it was just like going like this, because it was so intense. But when I listen to you, like with brushes, like it's just, it's a different kind of intensity. It's not like that kind of loudness and really hard playing. That's what I meant, with this. But did you see ever Tony and Alvin live? You probably did, right?
Of course I did, but just to follow up on what you just said,
Yeah,
there's a reason why I'm able to do that at a quiet volume, and that is because when I was a kid, my brothers and I were kids.
yeah.
The stereo that we had was one of these portable stereos, and it had 1.5 watts of power.
Okay, wow, yeah, okay,
So you can imagine, and no headphones, of course. Nobody had headphones back then.
sure.
So you can imagine what it involved trying to play along with these records, especially the fast tempos.
Yeah,
I played along with all of the records back then. Miles at the Black Hawk, Miles in Europe, Cannonball Adderley live in New York. All the records and all the fast tempos, and I tried to get inside the center of the beat at that
yeah,
low volume. And once
yeah,
I was able to do that and feel like I was creating some energy, then I was able to to do that live. In fact, some people actually have complained over the years that I don't play loud enough.
Well, I don't know. I listen. I have you on so many records. I listened to the other day. I mean, I will ask you later about that. Like that's Sco's, I think, first record live, the
Yes,
quartet. And there's this one song. I think it's Tegadagadan, 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 Air Pakistan. I think it's called.
yes, that's right. That's correct.
You're just like, I believe if you were there, the intensity must have been just like, really burning. So yeah, but
It
I think you
was.
became known because of also this, subtle style that's the brushes, the master, and which you are, of course. But you still, I think you were really really burn it up, I guess. And
I think it's a mistake to think that if you've heard someone once or twice that you know everything they can do. You know what I mean?
exactly, yeah,
Because every musician has much more
yeah,
than we realize until we've actually gotten on the bandstand with that person and played with them.
yeah,
And then now we know what this person is more capable of. So yeah, I've heard this before, where someone says, "Well, I heard that guy. I know what."
yeah,
No, man,
exactly, yes,
you haven't heard that guy. You've got to listen to this musician
exactly,
more.
yeah,
Really pay attention.
yeah, yeah.
But
But
to answer your question, though,
sorry, yeah.
of course I did see Elvin, and of course I did see Tony several times, and those experiences were amazing, amazing. I saw Tony Williams with Miles on one occasion.
Tony was the same age. I mean, you were kind of the same generation, right? Almost, or was he
Same
older?
generation. He was probably 4 or 5 years older than me.
Just like that, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but very close.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I was at Berkeley College, Alan Dawson, who was my drum instructor,
Oh wow, Alan,
he
what's such a
he asked Tony to come to Berkeley one afternoon, and Tony did a workshop for I think 5 or 6 of his students. So
wow.
there's 5 or 6 of us in a rehearsal room, and Tony Williams and Tony demonstrating, whatever Alan asked him to do, and that included playing in the styles of Art Blakey, Max Roach, Philly Joe Jones,
Uh-huh.
Roy Haynes, Elvin Jones. He could do it all because he had spent so much time listening.
Yeah,
So that was an eye opener for me.
yeah.
But
Did you then?
I saw him with that band, and then when I was in the Army in 1969, I heard him in New York with Larry
Larry Young?
Young and John McLaughlin. That trio, which was mind blowing.
I think Harvey Swartz, the bass player, he told me like he was on that gig, on the first gig of that trio, and he said just the sound, it was like like the Stones or someone playing. It was so loud, and Tony was just like burning it, like it. Yeah, incredible. I mean, I never got the chance to see him live. I just know him from records, but what people tell me, it's just the intensity he was playing. When he was 17 already, it's just
But see, here's the thing. You said earlier about seeing people live and feeling that intensity. Tony was taking Miles to Basin Street East and the Fillmore and clubs
yeah,
where Sly and the Family Stone were playing and Jimi Hendrix.
yeah,
And he was experiencing that music at that volume. So he knew what it was he was going after. He'd
yeah,
already done the thing with Miles and tipping and playing, now he was going for something else, and he knew exactly what the intensity level and volume level needed to be. And boy, did
yeah,
he deliver it.
yeah. It's just, I mean, it's incredible when you listen to those records, and it's just like, the guy was 19 or 18, and it's just, I remember when I was 18 or 17, I was struggling with, Blue Bossa or something. And you see this guy like burn in there, like, with
Well,
Nefertiti or whatever, like it's just like
if you
bizarre.
know anything about Tony's history, you know that probably from the age of 12,
Yeah,
he was completely immersed in the drums. That's all he did.
yeah,
That's all he did. And he listened to records over and over and memorized all the solos. So he was so into it and
yeah,
had absorbed so much of that sound. And of course, he had the talent. I mean, the guy
yeah,
was
yeah, sure.
he was just an amazing talent. He was able to use all of that knowledge or everything he had absorbed to come up with his own approach.
Yeah,
But it still blows my mind to hear even the first records with Tony.
yeah,
It
yeah.
still sounds fresh today.
Yeah, so contemporary. I mean, like you put it up, let's say, to this contemporary drumming school now, and it's just like you hear him, like, Nasheed Waits or whoever, this kind of now medium generation, but it's like it stands like easily. No, even, yeah, it's amazing. But you mentioned like Tony's age when he was 12, and I know your brothers, Pat and John, are amazing composers and musicians as well. And I wanted to ask you, how important were they in your jazz upbringing? Maybe like, how did you guys like discover jazz together?
My brothers were crucial to my development.
Hmm.
And Pat, being the oldest, was the one that was actually bringing home. He always seemed to find the right record at the right time to bring home. We learned music from my father. We had a family band.
Yeah,
My,
yeah,
my mother played the bass. We played a lot of gigs together. Learned a lot of tunes, a lot of standard tunes. My father was teaching me how to play the drums in the style of Chick Webb, or Baby Dodds.
yeah, yeah,
But it was Pat who brought home the modern jazz records. So he brought home Lester Young and Joe Jones playing together. And then those Lester Young records also had Buddy Rich playing drums, which was amazing. Then he brought home Miles Davis Jazz Track with Bill
yeah,
Evans, which was the
yeah,
first time I heard Bill. So he always instinctively, or probably from reading Downbeat magazine all the time, he knew which records to find. And we were introduced to John Coltrane through my brother Pat, Jerry Mulligan through my brother Pat. I mean, basically every jazz musician we were introduced through by my brother Pat buying these records and bringing them home. And my brother John, my brother Pat, and myself, and we had a high school friend who played the bass with us. We started our own band and we started to play together, and
Yeah.
so that's how it grew.
But did you guys like, put on, just for me, like this idea of imagining, like put on a vinyl and then try to check it out, what's happening, write it down, or how did you approach like this? You remember?
My father, once again, was a visionary and was also also very keen on technology. So even though we didn't have a lot of money, he found a used tape recorder and bought it for us. So we were able to record ourselves and listen back and hear exactly how bad we sounded, and then we could fix it, And so, yeah, it starts like that. It really does start like that. And recording is very important to this whole process.
Yeah.
Recording yourself and hearing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you mentioned Buddy Rich, and I read somewhere, like one of the first gigs of yours was kind of with Buddy Rich, and I would really like to hear from you how did that happen? I mean, you guys both being drummers.
When I was at Berkeley, one of my teachers, Ted Howe, piano player, was the musical director for a singer named Frankie Randall. Frankie Randall sang in the style of Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Very good singer and also an excellent piano player. He was a Juilliard graduate. And Ted asked me to make a gig with him one night with Frank, and Frank liked it. So Frank got an offer to go to the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas for a month with Buddy Rich's band, and he offered it to me. Well, there was no way I was going to turn that down because my brother Pat was already on Buddy's band, and so that's how I got to play with Buddy's band every night, and to hear Buddy every night, and to hang out with him, and to rehearse the band, So that was one of those experiences that had a huge impact on me.
Yeah. What do you remember from Buddy? I mean, like.
What I remember from Buddy is the complete command that he had of the instrument. And, people will always, acknowledge that Buddy was a child prodigy. That is true. But I've known child prodigies, and the ones that don't work at their talent, they end up falling by the wayside. Buddy spent a lot of time working on. First of all, he had to go transition from being a vaudeville snare drum player into being a swing era drummer. So he had to get a drum set and start learning those styles and playing with those bands. And then when Bob came on the scene, he started playing with those guys. So it isn't like he woke up one day and he was this great drummer. He worked at it. Maybe not as hard as you or I have to work at it, but he worked at it. And so the complete command of his instrument, the musicality of what he did, the intensity, by standing there and listening to him play with that big band, I realized I had a lot to learn, and I had to put a lot more energy and effort into my own drumming with the big band.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, again, probably the intensity is again one of those things that you get from that, right?
I stood in the wings and watched him night after night. I was less than 5 feet from him. I mean, you would pound off your chest.
Did you ever ask him for advice regarding playing, or not really? Did you never talk to him?
I wish I had asked him for a lesson. We talked about maybe more general things. Like, I remember one day we were talking about the band, and I said I want to be a small band drummer. And he said, "Man, there's no distinction. You're a drummer.
Yeah.
If you're a drummer, you play with a small band, you play with a big band. You have to do it all."
Yeah.
And he had done it all, so he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I remember we talked about young drummers who were making a splash, like Tony and I think I mentioned Jack DeJohnette or Billy Cobham. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And because we're talking 1968 now, so they're and Buddy said, I'm sure they're really, really good. He said, but let's see where they are in 10 years. And that is exactly what I was talking about earlier. if they're talented, great. If they're willing to work at it, which
Yeah.
all three of them obviously were, then you're going to go somewhere, and you're going to have lasting power. You're going to stay on top
Yeah.
as long as you're alive.
You have to work on it. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and like, but I've read that we're talking now like late 60s, early 70s, right?
1968 was
68.
when
Wow.
I
That's
studied.
amazing.
Yeah.
And but when did you land that gig with Chuck Mangione then? I mean, this was kind of like pre his famous era, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I joined Chuck Mangione from Woody Herman's band. So I went in the Army for 2 years. When I got out, I worked with Woody's band for a year.
Hmm.
And then I got a call from Chuck Mangione to join the quartet. And at the time, we were still playing jazz clubs. We were
Yeah,
playing,
wow.
we were playing bebop tunes. We had a couple of things that were pointing in that other direction. I mean, we played the Village Vanguard, we played the Half Note, we played all the clubs, Dante's out here.
Wow.
So, but gradually he started to write in a different direction. And at the same time, he got a record contract with A&M Records, and the music started to shift. And I actually loved it, what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good music. Yeah, sure.
I thought this was the direction he should take, and look what's happened. I mean, huge success.
Yeah. But this was were you already in New York at that time, or like not yet?
No, I'm from Western New York, New York State, so
Yeah,
a small village in the western part of the state. And Chuck's hometown is just 36 miles from mine. It's called Rochester, New York.
Oh yeah.
So that was my introduction to the scene in Rochester initially, and then when I joined Chuck, I just moved there and started to work with him. I think I was with Chuck for 4 years.
Wow,
we went all over the place, and we played with orchestra, we played with the small band, we played concert halls, jazz clubs. A wide variety of gigs. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, but you mentioned then Village Vanguard, and Smoke and all these amazing clubs. That's many don't exist anymore. But when was so you basically went to New York as a drummer already, and when did you then decide to move to New York, and how was this? I always when I talk to I spoke to, I don't know, Barry Altschul and all kind of all Adam Nussbaum and all these drummers who are a little bit younger than you, but entering the New York scene also. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, Billy Cobham, there was Bill Goodwin, I guess, Barry Altschul, all these incredible drummers. And how was this transition for you coming to New York? I mean, you already played with Chuck and, Woody Herman, you already had some resume, but still entering that scene, how were those beginnings for you?
Well, I can tell you the first time I played New York was with Chuck at the Village Vanguard. I remember distinctly that at the bar, standing at the bar was Tony Williams and Al Luzon and Billy Hart and maybe Al Foster. I can't remember.
Wow.
They were at the bar, they came down to check it out. But I didn't move to New York until after I left Chuck. So in 1976, I decided I wanted to leave Chuck and go to New York. It was on my mind to move to New York. I was 26 years old. I said, it's now or never. I'm going to do it. And, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had, like you say, I had a little bit of a resume at that point. And thanks to people like Bill Goodwin, who threw me work, and Warren Oates, another drummer in New York, who threw me work, I started to get my name around, and then I was fortunate enough to start working with some very, very good people.
Yeah. Was there like a camaraderie? Because I've spoken to so many saxophone players, like Liebman and Bergonzi and Bob Mintzer, and they all say that there was like this huge camaraderie between saxophone players. And how was it among you drummers? Like, was this the same kind of feeling, or?
It's not quite the same, because I mean, you can get, I know Steve Grossman, Dave Liebman, Mike Breck, they could all get together in Dave's loft and blow, right?
Yeah.
Drummers can't do that. So the only time we would see each other is if we went to each other's gig, or if we met up at the drum shop.
Yeah.
But it's not like we could actually sit down and play together and exchange ideas. And that's a pity. That really is a pity.
Yeah.
But the feeling was good. You know, no one had an attitude like, you know, you're taking gigs away from me, this or that or the other thing, because it's the same for everybody. You come to town, you're either accepted or not accepted based on you. It's all based on you, man. You know, if you can play and you have a decent personality
Yeah.
and you don't screw up, you should work. It should work out just fine. And of course, the times will dictate. They're a contributing factor because, you know, like right now, nobody's got any gigs. You can't play. But
Sure.
under normal circumstances, there's work. You know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But were you ever part also of this loft scene, like that like mid 70s or?
Well, I had a loft. Harold Danko and I
I
had a
didn't know
loft.
that. I serious
Yeah,
with the
Harold,
piano player Harold.
yes.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, there's a famous loft on 23rd Street at 7th Avenue that was originally owned by Kenny Werner.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Harold and I bought it from Kenny, and we lived there for a number of years. Then when we were done with it, we sold it to Joe Lovano and Glenn Drews.
Oh,
But
really? Yeah.
that loft was a huge open space above a restaurant. We could make as much noise as we wanted to.
That's
We had a stage with a grand piano and a drum set and a bass amp, always set up. So
Oh, wow.
you know, everybody would stop by. I mean, Lovano would come by and play. Not Brecker so much, but Dave Liebman would come by and play. I rehearsed there with Gary Burton's quartet when I joined his band. You know, so there was always a lot of playing going on there.
Yeah.
A lot of playing. That's the advantage of a loft. We weren't going to the loft scene as it's characterized in magazines. That's something else.
Yeah,
But we had our own loft, and people knew if they wanted to play, all they had to do was fall by. So
yeah. That's so beautiful. I mean, I think I spoken to Dave Liebman, and you know, he was describing all these sessions. It's just like, it's such a shame that these things weren't recorded. We don't have, you the guys didn't have, you know, iPhones or whatever. It's just like, you know, it must have been such amazing music because you relaxedly, you know, stretched it out and just, you know, played like an hour impressions or whatever you played, you know. So it's just, yeah.
that's how you learn,
Yeah.
Samuel. That's exactly how you learn.
So beautiful. But you mentioned Gary Burton, and you know, this mid 70s, and you know, when I see the names you played with, like Jim Hall also, who's like, for me, like, yeah,
Me too.
really,
Oh yeah, I love his playing. Oh my God.
I saw him only once live, and he was playing on such a low volume, speaking of intensity, that, you know, all of the audience was quiet as mice, and the band, you know, I think it was Scott Colley on bass. I don't know who was on drums, but maybe Bill Stewart actually, but it was just so down. His, you know, amp was like on 0.5, not even 1, but so intense. And I wanted to ask you, how did all these gigs start for you, like with Gary and Jim? And
Well, with Gary, when John Schofield moved to town, we hooked up immediately. We started to blow together. And Gary Burton sounded John to join his quartet. And he said he was looking for a drummer, and John recommended me. So John and I were in Gary's quartet for about 8 months.
oh wow,
And during that period, we also went and played the Berlin Jazz Festival and recorded that album in Munich that you were referring to. So that's how it starts. You know, it's word of mouth and it's networking. It's never been any different.
yeah,
The gig with Jim Hall came about from Bill Goodwin, who's been a friend almost my entire career.
yeah.
And he had the gig, but he had double booked. So he sent me into a week with Jim Hall with Michael Moore.
Oh wow,
And we had a great week. And back then, Jim wasn't playing quite that quietly, but it was never that loud. But the thing with Jim is he could create an intensity by virtue of the harmonies he would use, and also by virtue of like repeating the same note, you know.
Yeah,
And he,
yeah,
I think one night on I forget what tune it was, but he played the same note throughout as the lead voice throughout the entire form of this song.
Wow, yeah.
It was unbelievable, you know.
wow. Yeah, it's like, you know, you'd be so nice to come home to. Like, this is one of the solos I teach, you know, to every jazz student, because it's just like the voice leading and the intervallic approach and how to create a melody. It's just like, yeah, he was such a master. I mean, yeah,
Incredible.
so
His
beautiful.
sound
Yeah,
and the fact that he had his own approach, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he didn't sound like any other guitar player on the
Yeah.
scene. In much in the same way that Bill Evans didn't sound like any other piano player.
He's like Bill Evans on guitar. I mean, no wonder they played kind of together. I mean, it makes sense, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. But you mentioned Schofield and Berlin. Was this the first time you went to Europe with Schofield, or?
Well, I've been to Europe. It was the first time I went with John. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
but
did
like
the
jazz-wise, you were already before.
I had gone with Chuck Mangione to Ronnie Scott's
Oh, really? Oh,
in London for 2 weeks. So that was the first time, to Europe in general. First time to Germany though was with John. With that trip.
but like a let's say a 2-3 week European tour. Who was that with? Like with Bill or like?
Oh, the first time I did a tour.
Yeah, like a long one. Let's say.
Well, we went with Gary's band to Europe.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Oh,
Yeah, we did. We went to. I know we were in Germany and we were in Denmark and it's
Oh,
probably
wow.
mostly that part of the world. Yeah.
How was that like for you? Like as a young, I mean,
Oh, it
yeah,
was great.
yeah.
It was great. I think John had to sub out that tour though because he had something else going on. So Mick Goodrick came on that trip.
Oh, wow. Mick
If
was,
I'm not
wow.
mistaken. But yeah, it was great. I mean, Gary is the most organized band leader on the
Yeah,
planet.
sure.
So no detail is left unaccounted for.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah,
But an amazing musician,
yeah,
amazing. I mean, I was as blown away by his playing as I was by Buddy Rich's, and quite
yeah,
frankly, you just can't get any better on the vibes than that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you played, like John Scofield, Jim Hall, you already mentioned, like, guitarists. And, I studied a little bit with Scofield. And I mean, he's one of, he's up there with Jim, I guess, or he learned with Jim, of course, also. But all these, Toots Thielemans, who you also played with, like. But,
Oh, I love Toots. And another guitar player I worked with a lot in New York. In fact, we did an album with Bob Brookmeyer is Jack Wilkins.
oh, yeah, I'm doing this interview with Jack in 2 weeks.
Oh, please give him my love.
I will.
We had so much. We played a lot together.
Really?
A lot in his trio and a lot as sidemen for other people. But Jack and Michael Moore and me were the rhythm section for Bob Brookmeyer. And we did a tour with Bob and we recorded an album in Boston live at a club for a few nights. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, Jack's great.
He's such an underrated player. He has so many records. And, I sometimes tell people, and like, Jack, who? Come on, people. It's not only Pat Martino and Jim Hall. You have like all these amazing guys like that, people should know actually.
I also played with Larry Coryell quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had a quartet. Actually, it was a quintet with Liebman and Phil Markowitz and Chip Jackson and myself.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. And that was the first time I ever played opposite Roy Haynes was with Larry. Yeah. Another
Wow.
great guitar player.
Yeah, Larry also. Yeah. But we're still talking about 70s, right? Like this mid 70s kind of period. And
Yeah, and then as a complete departure, I played in a band led by Miroslav Vitus. And it was a fusion band. So he had left Weather Report.
Yeah.
And he was playing this double-necked bass guitar combination.
Really?
We would do Nardis together as a duet, as a duo every night. But other than that, he didn't play too much upright bass. But that was with Miroslav and I think also Phil Markowitz on piano and Chip Jackson.
Oh, wow.
And a saxophone player from Israel who can't remember his name, but good band. But that was complete fusioned out, and that was a departure, But like Buddy said, you're a drummer.
Yeah.
You do it all, man.
Yeah.
And I like that. I love that music. I love playing that.
Yeah. But you played also. I saw with Hal Galper, right?
Oh yeah. sure.
And Mike and Randy was there on?
Yeah, we never recorded that band, but we did quite a bit of work together. We had a short tour on the East Coast. I think we went down to New Orleans, maybe. I can't remember now, but yeah, we did quite a bit of work. Hal's amazing, and I did work with Hal, with Mike. You know, we did the Berlin Jazz Festival, and yeah, that was another great opportunity.
Still doing it, actually. He's amazing. We did like a talk 4 months ago, and you know, I was like a small kid in a candy store, like just listening to like, well, you know, you played with Chad Baker in 1960 something, or you know, stuff like that. It's just like incredible, and such intensity. But speaking of piano players, I know you probably answered this question so many times, but you know, I listened to you with Bill so many times, and you know, you have Bill there also, and I listened to that Balboa Jazz Club volumes, and you mentioned Nardis with Miroslav, and you have like a 17-minute version of Nardis there, but you know, it's a stupid question in a way, but like, how was it like with Bill for you? I mean, and primarily, what did you learn as a musician? I mean, like as a drummer, regarding time and regarding composition, and actually band leading also. I mean, since you became a band leader later.
Yeah, all of those things were important lessons to me. I mean, I don't think I could even remember everything that I learned from him, but I will tell you this. I learned what it meant to be committed to something, you know. I mean, I was always devoted to my music, but Bill Evans was the epitome of commitment to his music. When he was on the stage, there was nothing else existed except that music. But he wasn't tuning anybody out. It was just that was his sole purpose, was to serve that music. So his ego was well below that. He was down here on the ground with me and with Mark Johnson. We were working together to create something else. That's one thing. I also learned how to be at least to get better at being the leading voice, you know, the person that carries, that can carry weaker players, which of course he was doing in my case and possibly in Mark's case as well. Carrying someone who's he's not there yet, you know, but giving them the opportunity, bringing them along. In terms of band leading, oh my God, you know, I mean, I learned this from every band leader I worked with: Woody Herman, Chuck Mangione, Bill, Gary Burton, you name it. How to pace a set. You know, an experienced band leader will know which songs to put in which order, so that it's an enjoyable experience and a creative experience for the musicians and for the audience.
Yeah, it's a story, right? Basically,
it really is. It's a bigger picture than just, you know, let's play my favorite things. You know,
sure.
Much more than that.
Do you remember the first time you played with him? Like when he played the piano the first time and you hit the drums? How was that experience like?
It was actually very good, because I mean, I'd been listening to him since my brother Pat brought him home when I was 12 years old, you know, on Jazz Track, right? So his sound was firmly embedded in my brain, and it stuck there because it was so different from everybody else that I was hearing back then. They were all great piano players back at the time,
sure,
but nobody sounded like this guy. The closest person to sound even remotely like Bill was McCoy Tyner, and he had his own thing separate from, you know.
Yeah.
So I had already listened to a lot of Bill Evans. When Helen Keane called me and asked me to come down and audition for the trio, it was at the Vanguard, and I played a set with the band.
It was on a gig, like the audition, basically.
Come on down.
Oh, wow.
And at the end of the set, he came over and said, you know, it sounds like you've been checking out my music. You know, you seem to know everything. And honestly, I didn't, but I had been listening to him for so many years that in my mind, I had an idea about what would be the best way to approach playing with him.
Yeah. But did you, like, let's say, you know, let's talk about the trio with Scott LaFar and Paul Motian. Like, did you, like, I mean, when I listen to the trio with you and Mark, you know, you and Mark are your own entity. I mean, Mark is another genius on his instrument as well. But you approach it really differently than playing like Paul does. Of course, he was Paul, but did you keep in mind, like, that there was like other Bill Evans trios before your
Well,
trio?
of course. I mean, that first trio with Scott LaFaro was the one that actually formed my opinion about the concept that Bill was after. But my role model in that trio was always Scott LaFaro.
Yeah, Scott, man. Yeah.
He's the person I listened to the most intently because he was the most interesting, and I mean this with all due respect to Paul Motion, who opened a lot of doors.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But in terms of the rhythmic interest and the way that Scott was able to put his comments in between Bill's or in with Bill's, that's what I wanted, because I could sense that he and Bill had a definite link that was unique, and I wanted that same link with Bill Evans when I joined him. I wanted to be just like Scott LaFaro on the drums.
Yeah. Did you guys ever talk about like music, or let's say about Scott, or
Oh, sure, but not in terms of concept or anything technical.
Yeah. Okay.
He would tell me what a huge sound Scott LaFaro had. I mean, he said that he would literally fill the room with the bass that he had, and also what he would do, like at the Vanguard, for example, when it was time for his solo, he would pick the bass up like this by the neck and step forward in front of the trio and take a solo out front and then go back.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
That knocked me out when I heard that.
Wow. Yeah, such a shame. I mean, he probably would have done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was into so many different styles. I mean, he loved playing with Eric Dolphy. He was playing with Stan Getz. He really liked new music. He liked the freer music as well. It's hard to say what his future would have held, but it's unfortunately nothing we'll ever understand.
It's like Gary Peacock, and all these guys basically, fed on Scott, probably, right?
I think today, drummers, we can all look to lots of bass players, lots of drummers, Just take your pick. There's dozens of great, but I think every acoustic bass player on the planet at some point has to go back and deal with Scott LaFaro.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah, but I also, Joe, wanted to, I will not dive further into Bill because I know you've spoken so much about that. But I wanted to also ask you about your stint with Tony Bennett, which are, amazing records that I listened to. And also, like, I didn't know you played it, but like with Michael Bublé also, like, I listened to the other day, George on My Mind, and again, talking about brushes. But like, speaking about Tony Bennett, one of my favorites on vocals, definitely, like, amazing. How did that gig happen for you, actually?
That gig happened on the heels of Bill passing. Bill passed in September, and in December of that year, I got a call from his office. John Burr was his bass player, and John and I had done a bit of playing in New York, and he had recommended me to Tony's office. So that's how that started. And of course, Tony and Bill knew each other, and Tony had come in to see me play with Jimmy Rolls and Mike and George Mraz at Carol Sloan, another fine singer, at Michael's Pub in New York. So, we had spoken once or twice. He knew who I was, So that's how that came about. Tony's great. I still love listening to him. So it's just, and it was 11 years. So, you can imagine we ran the gamut of emotions in 11 years. But at the end of it all, I can say that I love the guy and I can still listen to him sing and enjoy it, And there's another musician who's committed to his art, completely committed to his art.
Tony, right? Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. But did these guys, I know you made then Jazz Compass, which is kind of your co-led label.
Yeah.
And the quintet, I think you did it in 2001, you becoming a band leader. But I wanted to ask you like two questions, like, did you like lead bands before already that weren't recorded? And did these guys you played with, like the really amazing band leaders like Tony and Bill, did they encourage you also becoming a band leader, or where was the moment when you decided like, okay, I want to do my own thing?
When I moved to Los Angeles in 1987, I met a whole group of incredible musicians out here. Many, many. There was a trombone player in town named Bruce Paulson, and we used to have jam sessions every week at his house.
Hmm.
And the nucleus of that band that I formed was actually part of Bruce's band. They were all in Bruce's band.
Oh, wow.
But I was hearing trumpet as opposed to trombone, as opposed, but that's another story. But I started that quintet in 1993. So
Already? Oh, wow.
That band had been together for quite a while before, and I tried unsuccessfully to get a recording contract.
Man.
Sending it around. And that's why the four of us decided we're going to start our own label, because we're tired of people stalling you and no response or maybe response. And so we just said, look, let's just put our heads together and see what we can do and see if we can get this out there. And it worked. I mean, we had a 20-year run. We've got 27 releases on.
Oh, wow.
And proud of all of them. I've got 4 with the quintet.
Yeah.
Tom Warrington's got 4 with his trio. I think Larry Kuntz has got more than that, maybe 6.
Yeah, Larry has many. I've spoken with Larry also.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Clay has got maybe 5 or 6. So, I'm glad we did it, and we were able to put out the music exactly the way we envisioned.
Yeah, that's so important.
Every band leader's dream,
Yeah. You like being a band leader? Like,
sure.
Yeah.
I think it suits me, for one thing, because I'm able to organize it in a way that isn't restrictive. No one ever feels like they can't do what they want to do. And of course, just like Bill Evans or Miles or any other band leader, you're going to select people based on an assessment of everything. Of course, their ability to play, but then are they people that that will show up on time and not blow off a gig? Are they going to be cooperative once they get there? Are they not going to get drunk? Are they going to, all of those things? And that may seem very mundane, but it's important. The fact.
Yeah, sure.
So once you've got a band established and you start to build a rapport musically, it's very easy to be a band leader, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, because being a sideman or collaborator, it's just like basically you show up on time, like you said. Being a band leader takes like this certain responsibility of taking care of the set list, taking care of the, arranging with the promoter, the fees, whatever, the hotels, or, I mean, unless you have a road manager, but there is still some kind of pressure behind it, right?
Yes, there is, absolutely. I mean, just finding the work, for one thing.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It also gives you the luxury of being able to decide what's going to get played,
Yeah.
I mean, I actually enjoyed the whole process of getting arrangements. Bill Cunliffe wrote a lot of arrangements. I wrote some arrangements. There are arrangements of tunes that maybe come from the classic jazz repertoire. But I have all that music in individual folders, and I can decide, what we're going to play that night. And then at the last minute, I may decide, well, no, we're not going to do that. We'll do something else. That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, but you deciding on what to play. I mean, you also wrote quite a lot of music. When I check your records, there's like this song 6 Tenths, which is basically in 5, but it's a blues, right?
Yeah, the sixth reference eludes people. The melody is voiced in sixths.
Yeah. I listened to it. It's such a beautiful melody. It's a blues, but you've written so many nice tunes. Like, I think that's one ballad, like Nonetheless, and some others. And,
no, that's not mine. Nonetheless is
From All the More with Kenny.
Yeah, no, Kind of Bill is on All the More, on one of Kenny's, but I wrote a ballad for Connie Condoli. I wrote a song for my wife. I've got a song for Art Blakey.
Yeah,
I got this song for the nation of Malawi. What's the Native Land? What's the other one? Desert Calm. I actually had a sabbatical from teaching in 2005, I think it was. and I use that time to compose and to put the record together, to produce it, and to record it. So when I have time, I enjoy composing. I really
Yeah, I
do.
wanted to ask you, what's your process of composing? Like, do you compose on piano or like?
Sometimes. I mean, Message from Art. I was driving in my car and it came to me.
Oh
But
yeah, like, oh
an
yeah,
Art Blakey shuffle.
yeah,
You know, that's kind of almost like a given or an automatic. But that tune kind of took kind of shape of its own. Um, the other ones, like Sixth Sense, grew out of an exercise I was using with my students, where
oh wow,
we're playing two on the bass drum, three in the hi hat, five on the snare drum, and then seven over the five.
oh shit,
And that's what you're hearing there. That melody is a 7/4 over a 5/4.
oh, so that you just wrote it out and like made a form and
And then I was also hearing a particular Duke Ellington voicing that he used to use, back when he was doing the coupling, where he would take muted trombone
hmm
and bass, alto saxophone. No, I mean alto clarinet or bass clarinet, and maybe what was the third? Oh, and cornet. Cornet. And he would put those three voices together. That's a
yeah,
particular sound that I was
beautiful,
hearing.
yeah. And also the bands you have live. There's like this one footage of this song. I think Bob Shepard has like a, he's one of those saxophone players who should be more widely known in my ears.
I totally
He
agree. I totally
burns
agree.
it. It's just like, man, who are you? It's like
He's played
incredible.
with everybody. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
when I moved here, Bob was playing with Freddie Hubbard.
yeah,
Then he was out with Steely Dan.
yeah.
Then it was Chick
Right.
Corea with the Origins band. I mean, he's playing with everybody.
Wanted to ask you, this album All the More with Kenny, and Kenny's and John Taylor, like two of my favorite. John again, and Kenny, one of the best composers in history of jazz. But I wanted to ask you, how did that gig with Kenny happen? And because it's also Furio de Castro on bass, like again, an amazing player. Like,
Right. That tour came about for me from Peter Erskine. Peter had double booked himself, and the band was John Abercrombie, Polly Danielson, John Taylor,
wow,
Kenny, and originally Peter. Peter had to back out, so he recommended me, and they called me, and that was 3 weeks. And our very first gig was Slovenia.
really? What? When did you? Where? Ljubljana?
God, it was 90. Yeah, I was Ljubljana, and it was 19. Let me think about this. 1996 or 97. I remember because Joey
Man.
DeFrancesco was there with John McLaughlin and Dennis
Uh,
Chambers.
yeah,
Dennis Chambers.
Dennis. Exactly.
Yeah,
They had the trio. Yeah.
yeah, there was a festival going on there.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah,
Really? I didn't know. I didn't. Yeah. Damn. I
yeah,
was too young then. Still.
yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. How was it
And
like to play with Kenny? Actually,
fantastic! I love playing with him. And I did a lot of playing with Kenny.
really?
Uh, yeah, we used to work in Toronto quite often, for a week at a time. Where else did we play together? We played together at the University of Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Beautiful.
yeah, no, he was always a favorite composer and a
Yeah.
favorite player. Just
Yeah.
another unique voice.
Yeah. You played with so many of these guys. Like we also mentioned John Abercrombie. You had the trio bass line, right?
That was great.
I
That
love that. I listened to that so much, and it's just like the standards you guys do. I mean, how was it? How was John? Like, did you guys already meet in the '70s or play together?
Well,
Like,
we were at Berkeley together, although we didn't interact too much. He was there at the same time.
oh
But
wow,
Hein van de Geyen is the person that brought us together. Hein had that vision for the group, and there's an amazing musician like
yeah,
that, Hein. But that was his concept to put this trio together. We did quite a bit. We did at least 2, maybe 3 tours. The third time it was with John Rocco added on clarinet.
yeah,
Great musician.
yeah, yeah. John is for me like, when I mention like Jim Hall, there's John Abercrombie. Like, again, one of those cats who musicians, all guitarists and musicians know about, but like a little bit wider you go, and it's like, what? You know,
Yeah,
not justified, but yeah, okay.
he's amazing. He
Yeah.
was a unique musician.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Joe, thank you so much for sharing all these thoughts.
You're welcome, Samuel.
I will not.